Chasing Amy.
Television isn't just entertainment, it's influence wrapped in glitz and glamour. When the cameras roll, truth itself becomes malleable, bending and stretching to fit pre-approved narratives. And sometimes the story told on screen isn't just false, it's calculated warfare. It happened today. A moment that began under the dazzling light of polished studio brilliance, but ended far beyond its carefully crafted walls. This is where it begins. At The View, America's self-appointed pulpit of enlightened discourse. The studio gleamed, its surfaces polished to reflect not just the lights overhead, but the grandeur of its own ego. Every camera angle, every spotlight, every seat placement looked deliberate, as if choreographed with surgical precision to deliver a narrative that felt undeniable. But behind the posturing lay something sinister, a trap set to launch the career takedown of someone who refused to fit the mold. Karoline Leavitt, a young conservative powerhouse, had the misfortune of catching their eye. Smart, competent, and fiercely ambitious. She wasn't just ignored, she was targeted. Karoline wasn't just what they opposed politically, she was what they feared. And in the world of media dominance, fear can breed desperation. The show began. The palpable tension of millions watching from their homes settled over the studio like fog. The hosts, mainstays of daytime television whose faces were familiar enough to reassure even the skeptics, didn't waste any time. Joy Behar opened the segment, launching the first strike. Her words dripped with practiced disdain, her smirk calculated down to the millimeter.
Karoline Leavitt, she began, dragging out the name as if it annoyed her to speak it aloud, actually thinks she's qualified to be Donald Trump's press secretary? Really?
Laughter rippled through the audience, but not laughter born from honest hilarity. It was the kind prompted by a flashing laugh sign, conditioned responses finely tuned by years of media manipulation. Across the table, Whoopi Goldberg leaned in, her glasses catching the studio light just perfectly, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly as she prepared her truth bomb.
Oh, please. It's because of her looks. Let's not pretend she's here for her policy knowledge.
More laughter. This time higher-pitched, tinged with faux shock, the sound producers pray for to boost ratings. What no one realized was that the laughter wasn't just cruel, it was reckless. While they strutted and preened under the controlled conditions of their own studio, oblivious to the storm brewing just beyond, Karoline wasn't smiling. She was watching, silent, calculating, waiting. Every condescending barb they hurled was being loaded like ammunition. And soon The View would finally learn a very hard lesson. The more tightly you grip the narrative's reins, the worse it feels when it slips out of your grasp. Back in the press office of the White House, Karoline stood amid her team. Screens popped with headlines every second, each freshly minted and dripping with venom. CNN's breaking story: Karoline Leavitt, a conservative Barbie built for Trump's ego. MSNBC's angle: she's decorative, not democratic. Even The Guardian weighed in with cutting precision. Leavitt is the face of everything wrong with politics. Karoline, still seated, exhaled slowly while her staff erupted into quiet panic. The scope of the attack felt targeted, coordinated. It wasn't just The View, it was a system working in tandem. A young aide with wide eyes practically fell into the room clutching his tablet.
Ma'am, you need to see this. Right now.
He handed her the device, where timestamps on online articles brought the truth into glaring focus. Drafts weren't reacting to the live broadcast. They had been uploaded during, even before Whoopi's most vicious lines. This wasn't journalism, it was a coordinated ambush. Karoline wasn't rattled. She never would be. Her voice, calm and steady, cut through the chaos.
They don't want a debate. They're manufacturing a scandal.
An older advisor leaned in, his expression grim.
So, how do we respond?
Her smile, sharp but quiet, sent chills.
We don't react. Not yet. Let them walk further into their trap.
Within minutes of Karoline's directive, the gathering storm erupted. Online sleuths smashed through timestamps and stitched together timelines. Her detractors didn't just look cruel, they looked intentional. And the illusion of journalistic integrity began crumbling under scrutiny. A major leak hit Twitter that night. Audio from The View's production meeting turned speculative whispers into undeniable proof. Let's frame her as inexperienced, Not credible. Joy leads, Whoopi supports. It has to feel organic. Transported back into real time, audiences rewatch clips of The View hosts parroting perfectly rehearsed talking points, while headlines rolled out seconds later. Suddenly, it all felt different. Not like entertainment, but like betrayal. The backlash was seismic. Exposed became the new tagline for the show. Ratings plummeted, advertisers pulled out, and ABC's executives began fielding phone calls like firefighters tasked with stopping an inferno. Karoline seized her moment. In a Fox News telecast watched by millions, she didn't cry foul. She declared war.
This isn't journalism. These articles weren't drafted in response. They were scripted before it aired. What you've witnessed isn't reporting. It's propaganda.
Karoline's words echoed across the nation, marking the beginning of a new chapter in media accountability. What followed wasn't just her vindication, it was her triumph. Karoline's name didn't just dominate broadcast television, it overwhelmed the online space, where frustrated Americans rallied behind her message of transparency. The next morning dawned cold and panicked for ABC. Reporters stood poised outside their studio office as rumors swirled that The View, once untouchable, was on the chopping block. Inside, executives debated their next moves. A younger strategist finally muttered what none had dared to admit aloud.
If we don't pull the plug, this scandal sinks the network for good.
Meanwhile, Karoline strode through the White House corridors, not as someone clinging to professional survival, but as someone shaping the battlefield itself. Today wasn't victory, not yet. It was a declaration of intent. Standing at the podium in the White House press room, Karoline delivered the final bombshell.
Starting today, we're giving independent journalists equal access. We're reinstating credentials banned under the last administration. And we're enacting transparency policies to ensure that what you report is what actually happens, nothing less.
It wasn't just a rebuttal to The View's smear campaign. It was the first strike against the broken media systems that had let it happen. From network boardrooms to living rooms across America, the realization set in. Karoline Leavitt wasn't just surviving scandal. She was reshaping the power dynamics behind it. And as the camera faded to black, one question lingered. Was this the dawn of a new era, or the last war the old media would ever lose?